Yeah, yeah. Yeah, but when I say to you, what do you mean by that? Do you mean what you say? And you say, yes, of course I did. What I say is what I say. You're appealing to logic. Who are you? Are you Jack or Bill? Bill. Do you mean Bill or not Bill? I mean Bill. You're appealing to logic. If you didn't appeal to logic, you couldn't communicate. You couldn't function in the world with a reference to any particular object. You wouldn't know whether you meant that one or another one. Logic is descriptive of every kind of action, thought, or word that we use. The basic law of logic is the law of identity. A equals A and not non-A. So you cannot give any attention to any particular A without the law of identity. You couldn't ask your question were it not for the law of identity. Ooh.
Yeah, that's good basis, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't necessarily physical reach, all the aspects.
Well, is there any realm of experience that isn't touched by that? Experience has to do with particular things that have identity. Now, I think I know what you're trying to get at, which may be that deductive reasoning, deductive proofs, are more like a parade ground drill than the actual tactics of life. Yeah, I buy that. I agree. That's what Wittgenstein says. It's his figure of speech. I think it's right. But the thing is that parade ground drill teaches you the kind of precision that's going to be necessary in the tactics of life. Let me put it another way. What he's trying to do is to develop in scientific fashion the philosophy of life. Sure, look where he's going. But why in scientific fashion? Well, because of the epistemological vacuum of those days, remember? You see? Because of the crisis of authority. Where the whole theme of the 17th century, Bacon, Hobbes, Descartes, Spinoza, is the answer in this epistemological vacuum is science. Hobbes. You know, how can we ground politics to avoid all this infighting? Get a scientific basis for politics. Well, Spinoza wants a scientific basis for a philosophy of life. Now, I suspect in the light of that what you're saying is you don't think it's very practicable to have a scientific basis for a philosophy of life.
Well, not necessarily. Yes, if practically it works out, but just follow through that.
Well, do you want anything less than blessedness? That's where it works out.
In theory, sure.
Oh, now you're saying you.
Using the analogy about the military, I mean, you can think, well, this strategy is going to work very
Yeah,
bad.
but you see, now your objection is not to logic, but to the conclusions he draws by this logic. And if you object to that, you've got to find where's the mistake that he made. Where's the proof that it is invalid? Which are the premises that are false? Because if you agree in principle to the laws of logic, then granted certain premises, the conclusions follow. If the premises are true of reality, so are the conclusions. You see? And so, you see, I have to defend Spinoza in that regard. If you say it doesn't have any bearing on life, what's this? If you say I don't like those conclusions, the way he draws them, well, specifically, why not? Now, what went wrong? You see? And I hope that we begin to see that if you don't like what Spinoza's doing, you have to find a hole in his logic. Don't throw out logic. That's the baby with the bathwater. If you throw out logic, you'll never think about anything. You'll never do anything. You'll never be able to say, I am I not? You really have a problem with identity. You see? No, the problem isn't logic. It's something with his use of logic. Now, it may be that this kind of scientific method that he's using is the wrong kind of method to use on a philosophy of life. Well, all right, to understand why he does it then, put him back in his historical setting with that epistemological crisis. Where else does he go? Say, well, his Jewish faith. Well, isn't that what he's doing, but finding a basis for what he understands of the Jewish faith? Yeah. They criticize him, of course, that he comes at it this way instead of straight from the Old Testament scriptures. Well, you see, he has problems with the Old Testament scriptures. That Tractatus, what was it called? Tractatus Theologico-Politicus that he wrote. Yes, he posed some of the problems he had with Orthodox Judaism. So he shut himself off from that route, the Old Testament revelation as it is. But what's the intent of the Old Testament revelation in talking of the Jewish view of life? Well, it's to show us that the love of God, obedience to God, is blessedness. So that's where his Judaism comes through. Now, I've been playing devil's advocate, because I don't think we can criticize until we understand. You see, so much criticism comes from not understanding. Yeah, I disagree with some of his definitions, therefore with some of the axioms. And I have all sorts of problems with the methodology in general. I think there are other ways of handling the epistemological vacuum. Yeah.
How thoroughgoing is his determinism? In a couple of places, he talks about pity and repentance being absolutely useless. And so that would, on one hand, you could say, I burnt my hand on the stove. Well, I'm not going to repent of that act, I'll put my hand back on the stove. I mean, that's
well, you know, why cry about spilt milk? That's what he's saying. What difference is it going to make?
I mean, does he leave room for learning from experience?
Yes, you'll be conditioned by it.
Conditioned, but not.
Well, conditioned by it is to say there's a causal process in which past experiences affect future behaviors. But when you're talking about repentance, being sorry for something, or being sorry for somebody else, pity, as well as repentance, he would say, no, those are passions which can overwhelm us and keep us from clear-headedness, you see.
So it's not something to be remembered?
Oh, he doesn't say it's not something to...
planning for the future, it's just...
No, he doesn't say that. You see, repentance is not just remembering so that you plan for the future. Repentance is an emotion of overpowering remorse that holds you in bondage. That would be his way of putting it.
He seems to speak of the emotions constantly in the extreme, whether
Well, yeah, then maybe we need to get into his discussion of emotions so that we can see that. He makes a distinction between passions and some other emotions. Yeah.
Like if he's saying that pity and remorse is not
Yes.
not good, with the determinism, it almost seems like you don't have any choice in the matter as to whether you are going to feel pity.
Yeah.
Or how's that?
Well, you see, while you're saying to yourself, now, if this is determined, I don't have any choice but to feel remorse, you are beginning to reflect on that, and another line of thought begins to emerge in your consciousness, which also determines your attitude and response. Namely, what I need is not just overpowering emotion. Now, let me get clear about this, and you're after some clear and distinct idea, you think? So, you do something about it, which shows that you can. But can doesn't imply necessarily free will. You see, because you can, right, in the sense that other causal processes leading you to do. There are things you can do for different reasons. I mean, I can fall off the roof of Blanchard if somebody pushes me. I can, if you hold my young. And not every can is a can of I choose free.
Just two quick comments and questions, actually. About his rationalistic trend,
Yeah.
you made a comment something like, well, what in experience can you find in logic or something of the sort? Well, the first question is, I would just ask, well, it seems to me that almost all, not all, but a great deal of what we consider pure reason is from experience, in the sense of, like, the law of non-contradiction. I mean, it's interesting to me that whenever they try to prove the law of
Yes.
non-contradiction, they go to experience and say, well, obviously, look, the man can't be here and the man can't be here at the same time, or something like that. And so that's my first question, is that it seems like a lot of this is based, I mean, a lot of rationalism actually has its roots in empiricism, in the sense that even what he says in his words, I can only think in words.
Let me answer that first, the way he would. You've got to distinguish between the logical status of an idea or a belief and the psychological process by which we acquire it. I mean, how do you learn that 1 + 1 = 2 as a young toddler? Oh, from seeing this and seeing this, and, you know. The psychological process is one of, if you like, empirical learning. But the logical status of 1 + 1 = 2 is not such that it's just an empirical generalization. Now, you see, the term a priori, we don't always use precisely, clearly, distinctly. And I plead guilty, you see, because technically the term a priori has reference, as we'll find when we get to Kant, and I've been saving it until then, has reference to what is universal and necessary truth. A universal truth that's logically necessary and cannot possibly be false. Now, you may become aware of that truth through somebody telling you. You may become aware of it by something in experience that brings it to your attention. But what he's dealing with in that sense is a lot of a priori truths, that is to say, universal and necessarily true, in that sense. To contradict them is self-contradictory. So to say we learn them by experience is irrelevant. You follow?
The only other thing was, it seems like this is the thing that makes me emotionally, in a sense, not like this.
Yeah, I don't like it emotionally either. I always say to myself when we get to Spinoza, oh, Spinoza, you know.
Well, yeah,
I'd rather have Descartes, even Leibniz, but Spinoza. Do I have to wade through Spinoza again? Yes, Holmes, you do.
It's just that it seems like it's such a dead philosophy, almost, in a sense. And that
Well,
he was talking about how it promotes a purposelessness.
yeah.
It's almost like a really strict...
No, I don't think it promotes a purposelessness. And then don't say nasty things about Calvinism. All you're doing is expressing confused ideas. Where were we? No, I know what you're saying. Seems irrelevant. What's the point? Seems dead. Abstruse. Yeah, there's a lot of things that are abstruse. Mathematics is. But are you going to turn your back on mathematics? It can be abstruse, but tremendously valuable and useful. You see? And he's not saying, oh, this is the only way you can ever get to know these conclusions. No, he's simply trying to show that it's demonstrable in what was understood then as a scientific fashion. Well, if you don't want to understand the scientific thinking of the 17th century, you're confused about other things. But I agree, it's not exactly the sort of stuff I like to read late at night when I want to relax. No, I don't take Spinoza on vacation with me. No. No, I had a grad school professor who took Kant's Critique of Pure Reason with him in the military in World War I and carried it in his hip pocket in the infantry across Europe. I presume he got it out once in a while, too. Some people would. But believe me, well, I'd rather do it with Kant than with Spinoza. But incidentally, if you were a hostage for 7 years and you had Spinoza with you, you would survive 7 years as a hostage much better than if you had a bunch of comic papers with you. Those guys are saying now they're out. What their minds were filled with in the past is what sustained them. Yeah.
Take that long to figure it out.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. 7 years it would take me to work through all those proofs. Yeah. Yeah, but there are people who thrive on this. A friend of mine, Alan Donegan, who taught at Caltech and died just about a year ago, a very fine philosopher, became a Christian about 15 years ago. I mean, the last book he wrote was on Spinoza. And I want to get a hold of him and read it and see what he did with Spinoza. But he was enthusiastic about Spinoza. Oh, admittedly, he had one of those iron trap minds, but, yeah, that's speaking about psychological reasons for being interested in Spinoza. You were having psychological reasons for not being interested in Spinoza. If you had a steel trap mind, maybe you would be interested in Spinoza. But obviously, there are Spinoza fans like there's the opposite. Incidentally, I'm glad we get into this debate because I was planning next time, this sort of reaction always sets in this juncture in the course. I was planning next time to say something about the significance and purpose of this kind of metaphysical exploration. So you're saving me a lot of effort in doing this. Because if you say it, it's much, you get it out in this sort of discussion, it's much more effective than if I just spout a few lines about it. Good.
Not to claim to have still mind, I mean, but I really enjoyed reading some of it. And I guess the fascinating thing to me were all the connections to Eastern thinking.
Yes, yes.
And it made me wonder a lot about some of the Eastern influences in Jewish thinking, how much that may or may not have influenced him, or whether it's coming out of, I've heard in terms of writings about Jewish logic, Hebrew logic, the whole concept of block logic, there's a lot more comfort with the kind of paradoxes that we, being so trained in the Greek thinking, are uncomfortable with. And I don't know, I just thought it was really fascinating, and it added a whole other light to ways of approaching
Yeah.
life than other.
Yeah, keep in mind the sort of thing I said when we were getting into Spinoza, that if you want a paradigm case of a pantheistic philosophy, this is the one that's most meticulously worked out, you see. Not that all pantheists use this kind of scientific method. Certainly Eastern pantheism doesn't seem to. But the value, beyond the historical value and influence and so forth, in looking at Spinoza is to see just what is entailed in pantheism. And I take it from the things you are bucking against, like his determinism, that you're getting the point of what's entailed in pantheism. You see, it's coming across. Yeah. The Eastern pantheist influence is more evident in 19th century monistic metaphysics than it is here.
There's a point that he makes about, insofar as men live in obedience to reason, they always agree. Then he goes on to say that men who agree, who are in obedience to reason, they're only useful to one another, implying that, I suppose, those who are not reasoning men are useless. Has that been taken by anybody to support, I don't know, the tyrannical ideas?
I don't think so. I don't think so. Because he is such an advocate of the rule of reason, you see, that tyranny, which plays to the emotions and springs from passionate emotion, is going to be about the last thing that he would want. Yeah. Well, since you shot my lecture for the day, which is fine, they deserve shooting sometimes. Not the lecturer, just the lecture. Let me see if I can capture what I had planned to say about this kind of metaphysical system, and just sum it up in that way. We'll build on this as we get into Leibniz. These three, Descartes, Spinoza, Leibniz, are the three great rationalists epistemologically, a priori knowledge. The three great rationalists of the history of Western thought, interpreting the world in accordance with certain a priori conceptions that come out in his definitions. Yeah. Theirs is what is sometimes called a speculative metaphysic, where the term speculative, keep in mind, does not refer to wild-eyed speculations, that would be imagination, but refers rather to seeing with the mind's eye, clearly and distinctly. Speculative metaphysics. Now, this is part of what you're seeing, I think. That kind of speculative metaphysic, developing a picture of reality, tends to generate problems about the relationship of appearance to reality. The relationship of appearance to reality. Spinoza says, this is the way it is. And you say, yes, but. And I have to stand on my head to answer it for Spinoza. You say, what your appearances are in reality. About appearances, we have only confused ideas. Now, what is it that gives rise to this kind of speculative metaphysic which creates such a tension between appearance and reality? And the thing underlying it is the problems they have with the world of appearances. The problems with the world of their experience. You see? The world of their experience. Vacuum of knowledge. A vacuum of authority. You see? Growing conflicts between science and religion. That's more evident in Leibniz. It'll come. You see? So what they're trying to do is to handle the problems in their world of experience, you see, by appealing to certain universal and necessary truths. Now, there's a contemporary of these people who's a jurist, jurisprudence, Hugo Grotius, a Dutch thinker, time of the 100 Years' War, religious war, Catholic versus Protestant, ravaging Europe, you see. And there were religious conflicts throughout Europe in the post-Reformation period. What about England? And the religious conflicts that underlay the English Civil War in Thomas Hobbes' time, you see. And in Europe likewise. What Grotius did was to look for some universal and necessary basis for law, for laws that will govern and limit the practice of war. Universal and necessary rather than partisan, you see. Not a sectarian view, but something that is universally binding, you see. Well, it's, like the East-West conflict of the last 40 years. What was the only hope of reaching any agreement and avoiding war? Well, what we've had to do for 40 years was to find something on which there can be universal agreement. And if you can't reach any agreement. The only point about universal agreement seemed to be survival. We want to survive, they want to survive.